Hi there, I'm Soumya from Digiotouch, and I'm delighted to present a cybersecurity framework for end-to-end IoT platform called Draft in ZINC 2020 conference. The experiment and the results that I'm going to present in this presentation are part of EU H2020 Fed for Fire project. In this presentation, I'm going to briefly discuss the motivation behind creating the cybersecurity framework. Then I'll be going into describing the draft cybersecurity framework components, the testing of the framework using Fed for Fire federated resources, going into some discussions, and finally take two questions that I received during the paper review process. Over the recent years, digital technologies, including the Internet of Things, have become the driving forces of the global economy. But the sheer volume of IoT devices, applications, and services with lack of standardized security assessment tools have resulted into a 91% increase of DDoS attacks. Market research companies estimate that in the Q3 of 2017, enterprises experienced an average of 237 such attacks monthly. And to top it off, the present COVID-19 pandemic has become a new weapon for cyber attackers. As a result, there are growing concerns about cybersecurity in every industry nowadays. Many business models of the global industries, including finance, healthcare, energy, and transport, are built on uninterrupted internet connection and the smooth flow of data. Cybersecurity incidents could disrupt the supply of essential and critical services. In parallel to that, we have legacy systems running that do not handle the legacy security protocols very well. We have lack of standards for industrial IoT security. Lack of scalability in different aspects could also lead to cybersecurity incidents. IoT devices that directly connect to the internet bypassing traditional IoT security layers have increased risk of being attacks. In response to the cybersecurity challenges, in this presentation, I'm introducing Draft, a cybersecurity framework for end-to-end IoT platforms. The Draft approach includes three components: a risk assessment framework, a security incidents and event monitoring tool, and Cyberattack Resilience framework. These three components are integrated in an end-to-end IoT platform under tests. 5 known and simulated cyber attacks were performed on the platform before and after the integration of Draft. The results that I'm going to present later indicate that the Draft framework is able to increase the Cyberattack resilience of the IoT platform under test. And the cyber attacks that we have performed, they have been carried out using the Fed for Fire Federated testbeds that I'm going to discuss later on. The cybersecurity risk assessment framework has been developed considering both technical and business policy standpoints. Majority of the current IoT platforms operating in specific industry verticals make it necessary to understand the business cases and regulatory context. This leads to business process identification and security requirement study. These two steps are intended to establish the business management perspective, continuously reacting and controlling the information derived from the cybersecurity risk assessment and the testing process. The technical aspects of the framework combine both risk assessment and the security testing. Risk assessment part analyzes potential threats, addressing legal as well as business issues, while the security testing is intended to discover flaws, vulnerabilities that can lead to potential security breaches. Assessment phase continues with these inputs for risk identification, estimation, and evaluation through attack vector and surface threat analysis. The new aspect of this assessment phase is that it is applied to all IoT devices, network, edge, and cloud-based web services, making the assessment end-to-end for the IoT platform. To best of our knowledge, such end-to-end assessment is a totally new approach in the commercial IoT platform market. Following that, security testing is performed where well-known and simulated cyber attacks are launched against the IoT platform under test. The presented framework significantly extends the HC risk-based security assessment by introducing the risk identification, estimation, and evaluation for end-to-end IoT platforms. The next component of this draft framework is a security incident and event monitoring toolkit. So the SIEM systems, they are fundamental for organizations to implement dynamic threat analysis, integrated security monitoring, and security management policies. The technical capabilities of the SIEM tool that we have included in draft include data source support. It's one of the key features of a SIEM system. Data storage capability, processing capability, flexibility in security directives, behavioral analysis at application level, risk analysis capability, resilience and fault tolerance based on cyber attack risk assessment, etc. The final component is a Cyberattack Resilience framework. It's actually achieved in 5 steps, known as preparation, detection, response, recovery, and review. In relation to that, in this work, I'm introducing a term called Cyberattack Resilience Readiness Indicator, which is assessed in which stage of the 5 steps is an organization in their digital transformation process. The Cyberattack Risk Assessment Framework corresponds to the preparation phase of the resilience. So if an organization has completed that, so it scores 20% in this readiness indicator. Achieving further steps increases the resilience readiness indicator. For example, the SIEM system is targeted for detection and response of the resilience framework. So achieving successful integration of a SIEM system increases the resilience towards 60% from 20%. Now, I have mentioned that the developed draft framework is integrated into an end-to-end IoT platform, and 5 known and simulated cyber attacks were actually carried out before and after integrating the draft framework on the platform under test. And this test has been carried out using the Fed4Fire Federated Testbeds. So in this slide, I'm going to give you an introduction to the Fed4Fire project. So it offers largest federation of worldwide next generation internet testbeds, which provide open, accessible, and reliable facilities and tools supporting a wide variety of research, innovation communities, and initiatives in Europe, including the 5GPP projects and initiatives. The experiments were performed within the scope of draft, utilized virtual wall and WildFT testbeds of the Fed4Fire federated resources. And we selected them for various reasons that I have already discussed in the paper. The generic setup of the experiment has been very simple. The Fed4Fire testbeds were utilized as virtual IoT devices, and through the internet connection, 5 known and simulated cyber attacks were launched against the IoT platform under test. These 5 cyber attacks included distributed denial of service, insecure default settings, insecure ecosystem interfaces, insecure authentication and authorization, and lack of secure update mechanism. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the experiment execution for DDoS experiment, which is shown on the right-hand side of the screen. It basically uses Docker images in which virtual devices are running, and Kubernetes is used to orchestrate the Docker images to launch the DDoS traffic. The experimenter uploads a tarball containing the Docker file and other files necessary to build the Docker image containing the virtual IoT devices. Then the web server from the Fed4Fire testbed builds the Docker image and pushes it into a Docker registry installed and running on the IoT platform under test. During the execution phase, the experimenter starts DDoS traffic by sending a start command to the web server. Then it contacts the Kubernetes master to create the Kubernetes jobs. The Kubernetes master then starts each Kubernetes node, which boots a Docker image within the virtual IoT device from the Docker registry of the IoT platform under test. Each virtual IoT device is pre-configured to send denial of service traffic to the web services of the cloud platform. In this scenario, 10 nodes were reserved, 5 each in virtual wall and WildFT testbeds. Each node is running about 300 virtual IoT device instances, and each virtual IoT device is generating close to 1.1 megabyte of data per second. So therefore, with 300 instances, so we were sending about 3.3 gigabyte of data per second to attack the platform under test. Now I'm coming to the results for this experiment. So under normal situations, a typical GET request on the IoT platform has a RTT of 200 to 300 milliseconds. And before integrating the draft framework, such DDoS attack flooded the bandwidth and computational resources of the IoT platform, forcing the web services to respond with the HTTP 503 service unavailable. But after integrating the draft framework into the platform, during the DDoS attack, we noticed that the web services of the platform were still able to respond to the requests. Although the round-trip time degraded to more than 800 milliseconds from 300 milliseconds, but the platform continued to operate, showing improved Cyberattack resilience. Finally, I would like to mention that the draft's cybersecurity risk assessment showed that the IoT platform under test indeed had a few default insecure settings, for example, default admin password, which were actually upgraded to make the platform more resilient. We also found out that distributed denial of service attack poses significant financial risk at a very short time. This is due to the fact that the infrastructure provider of modern cloud computing systems, they provide limited number of bandwidth and computation hour in the free tier, and such DDoS attack actually can push these limits very quickly. Integrating draft framework can mitigate several cyber attacks and increase IoT platforms resilience, which have been the target of this. Finally, I received 2 questions from the TPC over email, which I would like to discuss here. The first one talks about, can you discuss a bit between the physical layer security as well as the edge node security when contrasted with your approach? So there are 2 answers. First of all, the physical layer security is out of the scope of this work. And for the second part, when it comes to edge node security, so we are including risk assessment, risk management, communication network security, software development security, IAM, among others. And the second question is, how do you integrate various connectivity protocols into the framework and think to scale up to a 5G network? Now, here also I have 2 answers. So the first one being a dedicated module on IoT devices and networks are included in the framework, which is managing the integration and security aspects of various connectivity protocols like HTTP, co-op, MQTT, etc. And secondly, scale up to a 5G network is under development because we do not have access to a functioning 5G network. So we are utilizing testbeds provided by Federated to continue our work and scaling it up to the 5G network. So thank you very much for listening to our presentation. And if you have some additional questions or you'd like to contact us, here are the contact details, LinkedIn and Twitter. So feel free to follow us in LinkedIn and Twitter. Thank you very much. Bye.